So, on behalf of CIDOC and the ETHCOM team, it is a pleasure to welcome everybody to today's webinar. We are here gathered to explore and discuss the ongoing revisions to the ICOM Code of Ethics for Museums, a document that is fundamental to our shared commitment to ethical practice and integrity within the museum. The Code of Ethics has long provided essential guidance on professional conduct, decision-making, and responsible stewardship for museums around the world. The current review undertaken by the ETHCOM reflects our community's evolving responsibilities and the new challenges museums face in ever-changing global context. I'm pleased to welcome our speakers today, Dr. Sally Yerkovich, a cultural anthropologist and expert in museum ethics, who is currently leading the revision of ICOM Code of Ethics for Museums. Dr. Yerkovich has been dedicated to ethical standards in the museum field through her extensive career. She served on ICOM standing committees on ethics for 5 years and its chair from 2016 to 2023. With over 3 decades of leadership experience, Dr. Yerkovich currently serves as Director of Educational Exchange and Special Projects at the American Scandinavian Foundation and teaches museum ethics in Museum Anthropology program at Columbia University. Our second speaker is Annabi Chedlia, a distinguished historian, archaeologist, and former curator of Carthage Museum. With a wealth of experience in both museography and collections management, she has shared her experience as an educator at Trilce University and as UNESCO expert in the fight against illicit trafficking of cultural property. A long-standing member of both ICOM and CIDOC, Annabi's extensive contributions to the field also include participation in SAREC, ICOM Deadline, and currently. And our next speaker is Chair of CIDOC, Dr. Trilce Navarrete, who is an expert in the economic and historical dimensions of digital heritage, currently serving as Assistant Professor at the Erasmus University Rotterdam. She coordinates the research project, a Horizon initiative focused on participatory business models, and leads the AI Arts and Culture Research Practice as Academic Director of ECDA. Dr. Navarrete is part of the interim management of EAT Culture and Creativity and has served as scientific advisor for the European Group of Museum Statistics since 2011. I think we will have a very interesting session and cover all the interesting topics which will be crucial for the museum field in future. Thank you all for participation, and Trilce, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mariam, for welcoming us in this new webinar. You've been leading the CIDOC webinar series for some time, and we are very pleased to have this collaboration between CIDOC and the Ethics Committee, precisely because there's been some discussion on where's the documentation side of all of these. From CIDOC's perspective, of course, we always consider the documentation being at the core, the start of everything and the continuation of everything. And so we are very pleased to have this dedicated discussion on the topic. But I think instead of going into the content now, I would like to first maybe have the 2 presentations that are related to the code, and later on I can come back with some questions to lead more also the conversation on the different elements of the documentation. And we know that we have the experience from other use of technology, that in terms of the documentation, they have an influence. We also know that documentation is important in the way that it definitely records the information that we have for future generations. And this has important ethical implications. We also know that museums, with proper documentation, are stronger in making any kind of decisions. And so, again, for us, it's quite an honor to have this conversation with Sally and with Chedlia. about the code. So maybe Sally, I'll let you make a presentation.
Sure. Thank you so much. Chedlia and I are really pleased to be able to be here with you today, because we know that your comments are going to be really important to us as we revise the first draft of the Code of Ethics. I'm going to give a sort of the background of the revision, just to let you know the process that we've gone through. And then Chedlia will talk more specifically about collections and documentation. So I'll try to go through my part of this very quickly. So it's a lot of information very quick. So I apologize for that, but I want to leave time for your discussion. So I'm going to share my screen. And okay, there we go. So as you all know,
Sally, we don't see we see your slides in draft mode, and so we see not on presentation mode.
Okay, they look as if they're on presentation mode on my screen. So I'm not sure. Let me try again. I'll go out and I'll stop sharing and start sharing again. So. How is that?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, good. Okay, great. Okay, so anyway, as we all know, the Code of Ethics for Museums is a foundational document for ICOM because it defines the standards of professional conduct, for museums and museum professionals worldwide. And it provides a unifying framework for the profession. When one becomes a member of ICOM, whether as an individual or as an institutional member, we agree to abide by the code. And the code is based on values that we as museum professionals share. Values like the respect for diversity, safeguarding tangible and intangible heritage, fostering lifelong learning, and promoting responsible governance and professional practice. The code was created and adopted by ICOM's membership in 1986 as the ICOM Code of Professional Ethics. It was then amended in 2001 and changed again and adopted as the ICOM Code of Ethics for Museums in 2004. During the debates on the museum definition at the General Conference in Kyoto in 2019, the Standing Committee on Ethics, or ETHCOM, recognized that it was time to take another look at the Code of Ethics. We noted then that the social roles that museums can play in empowering communities, promoting sustainability, and supporting human rights must be acknowledged by ICOM. And we felt that the Code of Ethics should address those and other contemporary issues. At that time, then, ETHCOM recommended to the ICOM Executive Board that the code be revisited and that ICOM consider revising it. In revising the code, we are committed to an open, transparent, and inclusive process. The methodology for the revision is based on 4 consultations with the membership, and the success of the revision depends greatly on the membership's participation. We're currently in a period of review between the 3rd and the 4th consultation, but I will focus more on that later in my remarks. The first consultation happened in 2021, and we asked then fairly simply if it was time to revise the code. And we heard a firm yes in response to that question. We also heard that issues like responsibility, equity, accessibility, restitution, and the digital dimension of museums should be addressed in the code. To learn more, in 2022, we conducted a second consultation that focused on the details of the 2004 or current code, and principle by principle, we asked what should be changed, what should be added, and what should be deleted. The consultation extended from the spring through the fall of 2022 and was bolstered by a series of webinars as well as a roundtable session during ICOM Prague. The analysis of the proposals in the second consultation told us that ICOM's members wanted the code to be consistent with the new museum definition. They wanted the inconsistencies, redundancies, and structural problems in the current code to be addressed, and they wanted each principle to be given equal weight. They also recommended that we pay close attention to the terminology that we're using, simplifying it whenever possible, and including a glossary. The second consultation also brought a number of new key themes to the fore. The importance of the human factor was stressed. The members noted that the public purpose of museums should be foregrounded and that museums should support their people by promoting their professionalism and ensuring that they have additional training if necessary. The need for museums to focus upon diversity and inclusion was highlighted by the respondents. Data privacy and confidentiality were noted repeatedly as concerns that needed to be addressed in the code. And finally, intangible cultural heritage, illicit trafficking, and museums in zones of conflict were all raised as issues that should be in the code. So as a result of the second consultation, we created, or ETHCOM created, an outline of 5 core topics and supporting statements. And the topics were, number 1, the social role that museums play in preserving and presenting collections in service of society, the professional standards that museums observe that help sustain the trust of the public, 3, the educational role of the museum in presenting programs, publications, and exhibitions, 4, the museum's responsibilities in stewarding and safeguarding their collections, as well as in documenting and researching them. And then finally, how museums, governing bodies, and leadership ensure that museums operate sustainably, serving their communities in perpetuity. This outline was then the subject of the third consultation in 2023. And that consultation added a few new themes or emphases to the list of topics to be tackled in the code, including the critical need for professionalism among museum staff and the role of training, as well as the professionalism and professional standards and decolonization. It also told us that we needed to communicate more clearly the non-hierarchical nature of what are now the 5 principles of the revised code. So this infographic addresses this point, demonstrating how all principles are equal in importance and how attention to each is equally essential to operating a sustainable and inclusive museum. The third consultation also asked us to be clear about how the revision will relate to the current code, or how the revision will relate to the 2004 code, sorry. So here you see on the left, the 2004 code, and on the right, the principles of the revision, or proposed revision of the code. For example, to pick an easy one, the new principle on education, number 3, directly relates to what was the 4th principle in the 2004 code. But this maps the relationship. And finally, it wasn't always clear to people how the new code relates to the relates to the new museum definition. And so this infographic was developed to show the relationship. The full results of all 3 consultations are available on the ICOM website, on the revision of the Code of Ethics page in the ICOM member space. After reviewing the results of all 3 consultations, the revision team, there are 6 of us, began to create the first draft of the revised code. We used a spreadsheet that took into account the following considerations. First, the outline. Second, we mapped the 2004 principles and statements to the core topics. We then summarized the comments from the 3 consultations, and we looked at how everything relates to the museum definition. We also identified key words that will be defined in the glossary, and we paid as close attention as we could to the language that we were using, trying to use words that translate easily, at least into the 3 ICOM languages. And this is a comment that we're getting great comments now about different and define, and also about words that are problematic in terms of translation. So that's going to be really helpful to us as we revise the code. So the result of this exercise is the first draft of the revised code that we released in September. It is organized around 3 levels of information. There is first each core principle, then each principle is followed by supporting statements that expand upon the principle, and then each of those statements is described in detail, and the descriptions then elaborate upon the statements. Currently, the national, international committees, regional alliances, affiliated organizations, working groups, and standing committees are reviewing our first draft. And we recognize that the first draft is a very rough draft. It's a classic first draft. So we're asking for help to strengthen the revised code so that it will really reflect the work of the global museum community. We're asking in the feedback, we're asking the national committees to submit short answers on the 5 principles of the code and their statements, asking them if the principles meet their expectations, and if not, to explain why. So we're getting many comments there about things that we need to add to the statements. We're also asking international committees to comment in detail on one core principle that most closely relates to their committee's area of expertise, so that we can get more specialized feedback. And then finally, we're asking everyone to, if the draft covers the full breadth of the ethical issues that museums are facing in the first part of the 21st century. So in addition to this feedback, we've contacted, of course, the working groups and standing committees to take advantage of their special expertise. And we hope that they will each provide us with an in-depth review of the first draft. And so far they have, we're pleased to say. So then where are we now in the overall process of revising the code? The current review is a really critical step because we're going to use the results that we receive to craft another draft that will be the subject of a 4th full consultation starting in probably in February of 2025. Again, we'll ask all committees and organizations and alliances for their feedback on the final draft. But we hope with the robust participation in the current review that we'll be able to write a close to final draft for the 4th and final consultation. But of course, we will take all of the comments that we receive at that stage into account and prepare a final version of the revised code for a vote at the General Conference in Dubai in 2025, a year from almost exactly now. So just one final comment about the revision. We see the revision as an overarching document that highlights and provides guidance on the major issues facing museums and museum professionals today. In addition to the proposed revision, we're hoping to develop accompanying guidelines that will provide more details on best practices and address issues for which standards are rapidly changing. These guidelines can be more flexible documents that can be edited as the field changes, whereas the code itself needs to be voted on by the entire ICOM membership. So we're hoping that the guidelines will give us more flexibility and will give the field more guidance. They will be especially important for issues related to subjects like museums' use of technological innovations, AI, for example, or the evolving digital dimension of museums. So finally, after that, probably after the meeting in Dubai, we'll begin to seek case studies that will provide subjects for further discussion and debate. And again, we will reach out to all of the committees, alliances, and organizations for their suggestions about case studies that we can use. We hope that this approach will encourage more dialogue about the ethical issues that we deal with in our professional lives, and that conversations about ethical dilemmas will become more common in museums in the future. So we thank you very much for your interest in this process, and I'll now turn the screen over to Chedlia to talk more in detail about museum collections and documentation.
Thank you, Sally. Chedlia, you're still muted, and I hope that you can share your slides. Let's see.
Oh, I can
Yeah,
share.
we can hear you.
Yes. Okay. Mhm. I cannot share my screen.
Chedlia, do you want me to share your slides? I could do that.
Yes, just, I don't know.
Do you have them already? Otherwise, I was going to offer, if you want to send it to us, we can also share.
I have a copy, I think.
Yes, I don't think it's the last one. Okay.
Okay, I will.
You can hear, you can see it or not? It's good.
It is in the process, but it hasn't yet transferred. Okay, we see that you have shared slides, and now if you can make them presentation mode.
Okay.
I am a Mac person, so I don't know how to help you there. I think you have to go again, fichier, no?
Is down
It
in
is
the
down.
that
Yeah, little
cup
image near the
shape?
zoom bar. Down on the right.
I don't know why it is. No. I cannot share it. I don't know. Oh, Sally, if you have the if you can share the copy you have. Sally?
Yes, I will. I'll try to share here. Does that work?
We see them. Yeah. If you want to put
Okay.
them,
Yeah, and I'll put the
slideshow. Thank you.
yeah, there. Okay.
Perfect.
Good. Okay, Chedlia, just let me know when you want me to change the slide. Oops.
Problem. I don't know why. Okay. So, yes, it's this. Okay. First, I want to say that I really, very grateful to Trilce and Aaron to have for their approval to have this meeting and this opportunity to meet with CIDOC and to debate with experts in documentation about documentation and collection and research, and how we can, with you, optimize these concepts we have in the new Code of Ethics. Thank you again. And thank you also to Sally for the presentation. You have said all what we have to say. My main concern asking to organize this meeting today is to hear your comment and have your feedback about this first draft, asking for your input as expert. We will note and all the feedback and all the comments as we usually do, and we will try if there is a consensus with other members to include them in the next draft. The surveys proposed now and shared actually by ETHCOM in the member space has the same objective, and there is a special survey about international committee. So please, if you can reply before the deadline of 15th of November. I will try to be as short as possible, and I hope we will have enough time and to hear for your comment and if there are something which are missing and what we can develop in the first draft of the code with your expertise. So if there are many people who can, I see that there are no many participants, but if you want to make your comment on the chat, it will be fine also. So my first slide, please, Sally. Sally, please, the first slide.
I thought I put it there. You can't see it?
Yes.
Okay.
So as the majority of museum professionals admit, even if some members don't agree with this, collections are the starting point of the museum mission and the base of the museum existence. All museums' activities as scientific or culture or exhibition and program and educational program are about how to protect, to study, and to highlight the collection. So even in the new museum definition, the main activities of the museum are to research, collect, preserve, interpret, and exhibit the collection. Next slide, please. In the current code of 2004, the points or articles dealing with collection are mainly mentioned in principle 2 and 3. But we have also points linked to collection in principle 4 and 6. So we have more than 40 references to collection in the current code, and our goal in ETHCOM was to bring all these points together under one principle dedicated to collection And so we can avoid repetition and redundancy. It was a difficult exercise, but I think we did it. It's up to you now to say if yes or no, we succeeded. Next slide, please, Sally. So after 3 consultations, as mentioned by Sally, and many webinars, and among the different proposals received, the members focused on including digital and virtual collection in addition to the physical ones. To add also intangible heritage, which was not in the current code, the use of AI and new technologies, especially in documenting the collection and protecting the data. Many proposals focused also on sustainability. This implies how museum can participate in the reduction of the footprint carbon in this daily work. We also received comments and proposals about decolonization and restitution. Next slide, please. The proposal frequently recommended by the members about collection and documentation were scheduled in an outline of 5 core topics, and we will present and discuss today about core topic 4, which is dedicated to collection, research, and documentation. So the first point is about stewardship and safekeeping. The museum should protect, preserve, restore the collection, both tangible and intangible, and also natural and cultural, either they are on display, in storage, or applying the professional standards. The second point is about collection policy. Museum had to create and maintain an official document setting out procedure and applying professional standards concerning acquisition, preservation, conservation, and describe the ethical condition for managing the tangible, intangible, natural, and cultural collection, whether they are in display, in storage, or in any other location. Point 3 was dedicated to sensitive materials which need a specific care and a special ethical policy. This was in the current code, but we tried here to develop it better, and the policy should dedicated to acquire, how to acquire, store, restore, safeguard, preserve, secure, and especially how to exhibit the sensitive material collection. A special mention should be done concerning the deaccessioning of this kind of material and restitution if the countries or community of origin asked for this. Point 5 is about acquisition and the procedure about acquisition, controlling through ethical criteria and professional standards all acquisition of object. The museum has to make research about the origin and also the provenance, which are 2 concepts very different, even if sometimes they are confusing, and require official and authentic documentation to avoid the acquisition of object or collection without any information or identification about its origin or issued from illicit traffic. Point 5 focus on the access to collection for research, study, exhibition, and educational programs, research accessibility and protection of data with different levels of access for preserving the confidentiality and security of copyrights. The use of documentation and inventories based on certification and legal information facilitated by new technologies and AI for preserving the data. Point 6 is about research to further understanding, to encourage research for a better knowledge of these collections and to be able to share good information with the public. The seventh point is about develop the procedure about of the accessioning and disposal, including the return and restitution of cultural objects, developing an ethical process for deaccessioning and restitution and repatriation, and especially for the return of illicitly acquired objects when asked from the country of origin. The last point, but perhaps it's the most important one, it's fight against illicit traffic of natural and cultural heritage, intangible and tangible heritage. Even it's the last point, but I think it's the most important one. Museums should keep and develop exhaustive and scientific inventories and documentation for their collection. The documentation should apply the professional standards as those of CIDOC to help in locating and identifying stolen objects. The museum has to provide an authentic and reliable information. The documentation should include two important details, one which are the photographs, and two, the access and inventory number, which is the unique information to identify the origin of the object. Of course, a detailed description, if it's possible, of the object conclude the process to avoid museums to acquire stolen object or object originated from armed conflict region or from a region having a natural disaster. Next slide, please, Sally. I would like to add, even if the principle have been reduced from 8 to 5, we didn't delete information. It was a very difficult exercise to eliminate repetition, but we tried to merge the same concepts which were disseminated in 2 or 3 principles in the current code. The last thing which is new in this revision of the code, it will include a glossary where terms which are confusing sometimes with members will be explained, like communities, which is very simple to use in English, but it is difficult to use in French, perhaps in Spanish and in other languages. There will also be an appendix. Some of this, the content of the appendix exists now in the current code in Principle 7, but now we will have an appendix which lists all the international laws and conventions referring to heritage, museum, and even for human rights. And we are developing many guidelines with the specific museum professional practices in the aim to assist all the museum professionals which are far from any help. We just developed 2 guidelines, one about fundraising, the second about acquisition, accessioning, and deaccessioning. And we hope perhaps with CIDOC develop another one for documentation. I hope I was not too long. Thank you for your attention. And we really appreciate to have your measure proposal, comments, and feedback on this first draft. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chedlia. I think it works really well that you focus our discussion based on this. I realize maybe not everybody here present is aware of all of the the last version. So in case you haven't seen it, I posted on the chat the principle 4 that you were referring to on collections and research, with the a list of 8 how do you call them, the description.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the core principle and then the 8 statements. To follow your vocabulary, because these then can help us focus the considerations. And first of all, I just would like to say that in CIDOC we are also, because of the new definition of museums, we're also going through a new definition of what is museum documentation. And with that, this process of really thinking about what is it that we do and why we do it has been quite important. And it fits perfectly on this timing for the Code of Ethics. Maybe if you would like to stop sharing the screen. I see now Amal is sharing. Or is it to take notes? Yeah, okay. So maybe we can discuss first, and I'm taking some notes on our discussion, let's say. Sorry, I was thrown off by this whiteboard. So are there initial responses to this now? I think some of you guys here present are aware of our new museum documentation definition. And maybe thinking of that, is there a response that you would like to make on the 8 points that Chedlia just presented, also with the background of Sally? Any initial responses?
What's it about?
So there are an initial response based on our museum documentation definition. I'll place it again on the chat, just for everybody to see. Whoops! Oh yeah, it's too long, so I cannot place it that long. So I'll place the first part. Yeah, there we go. So perhaps one initial response from my side is, as Sally said, this is meant, even though they're numbered, the principles from 1 to 5, it doesn't mean that one is more important than the other. So you have to see them maybe or cyclical or, in a different visual that is not, they're numbered just sort of to facilitate talking about them. As well as the statements under each core principle, because the statements also might not be, or is this how you see it, right? The statements are also not hierarchical in particular. Yeah. And so in terms of the 8 statements that Chedlia has now presented on the collections and research, I think the documentation goes, of course, in all of them, but I think there's a few that have greater weight. I did want to also mention that documentation goes in a few others, because as I place the definition of museum documentation on our chat, we believe that museum documentation also can be supported by other individuals at other moments, for instance, during engagement with the audience, or these education programs and exhibitions, or maybe the social responsibility, that there's also a link there on how to relate to them. But I think specifically focus back on the 8 statements. Maybe Marcela, I don't know if you wanted to say something in terms of the preservation and illicit traffic side of things that's linked to your line of work.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
No, I just wanted to thank you for this instance and tell you that this process of prototyping and iterating methodology and the principles and the course and this structure has been very inspiring for us in Chile. I'm from the Museo Histórico Nacional, National History Museum, and we are trying to merge these principles in the policy and updating also the policy. That mainly I wanted to say, and thank you.
Thank you for that comment. That's great to know that.
In fact, documentation is in all the 5 topics. We can find some practices in education, in the professional practices, in the management of the museum. So in each of the 5 core topics we had, we can speak about documentation, and we have done this really good job where we tried to delete and to delete all the repetition that are in the current code, and we tried to focus and to merge all the principle or point that were in the current code and make just one principle speaking about documentation, about collection especially. And we hope you can help us when you will have a look about this first draft and say if we did it well, if there is something we can develop with you, if there is something which is missing or something we have to add, especially on documentation, which is very, very important. I was in CIDOC when there was the norm ISO of documentation many years. Perhaps some of you were not born, and I don't know if this ISO standards is actually used, or there is something which has been developed after this, because you are speaking about another way to approach the documentation in museums. Is there something new in this on this point?
Sorry, I missed that. Is there something new on the ISO?
No, not on the ISO, but the fact how do you approach the museum documentation, the collection, the documentation of the collection, museum collection. Sorry for my bad English.
In our new working definition, you mean? Yes. So we have taken an important step, I think, to make a bold statement on 3 main things. So first of all, we consider documentation an ongoing process. So this is not something that will ever stop. And this has many implications because, it goes then into governance and professionalism, that you need to continue to train as well as provide resources for ongoing work. Is not something that is done, particularly as we have expanding collections, as you mentioned. It used to be just the collection, now we have digital and intangible heritage and, maybe augmented realities or other things. And so it's additional collections. We did a survey in Latin American museums, and the more advanced museums have multiple collections. They don't ever finish the physical because, they're all sort of continuing. So that's one major point. Another major point that we believe is not stressed enough when talked about documentation is the notion of inclusivity. And by inclusive documentation, we mean not only considering multiple perspectives, as for instance, throughout time. So you have a city that's named something in the past and something else in the present. They're both relevant and both truthful in their own context. And so with this principle, we believe that there could be multiple ways to understand documentation. And that has important implications because currently in digital formats, you have one preferred term. And this, we believe, is misguiding because there's not one that is necessarily better. It might be that one institution prefers it or one perspective prefers it, but it doesn't have to be absolutely, preferred. So this we're talking, there's actually a discussion regarding ISO on how to drop this term of preferred terminology. And we also believe inclusivity is linked to other individuals beyond professionals, as we mentioned, as I briefly mentioned earlier, and Marcela and Cesar were part of this workshop recently, in which we discussed how this inclusivity is also to give voice to those who might not have the chance to voice their heritage or their knowledge because they might not have a museum professional training or a position. And so that's for us important, as well as also understanding that many publications can provide different contexts. So one object can be seen differently within a historic context or a scientific context or a artistic context, and they're all valid. And just let me just finish the third term that I think, or the third aspect in this bold proposal of us in museum documentation is that documentation is a core activity. And maybe for us, this is normal. But if you look at the budgets of museums, this is not reflected. Yes. We see that in the digital, digital started as the registration of libraries, and then it fed into other parts of the museum. However, now we see that the funds are moving into display, so engagement with the audience and VR and contact. Whereas we believe that you cannot just move all the attention. And again, it's like having multiple collections. You must have multiple attention to not neglect that back core. Which is obviously very visible. Museums that have proper documented collections can play with AI because the data is there to advance, whatever needs to be advanced, maybe analysis or visualizations or, presentations or whatever, but it's all based on the data. If you don't have proper data, then you are not able to benefit from this new technology. And so I think for us, these are the three main points that we want to bring across in this definition, which, maybe they're not, not so radical, but for us are extremely important and maybe not always mentioned. Edurne.
Thank you. Just one question. We gathered because there is this process in the Code of Ethics to be renovated, but in which way can we keep in touch and keep moving forward with this relationship and communication between ethics and documentation, and to implement and discuss over specific cases the results of the Code of Ethics? Because on the collection level, I believe that it's very important, very interesting what Chedlia shared with us and Sally. But even though it's from the 80s and with a renovation in different, well, at least in our countries, maybe it's not that well known. And for us, for example, having good data implies has the implication from the beginning to decide which data is published, can be published and which doesn't, no? And from there you have a basis of ethics and responsibility towards data, but it's difficult because many organizations take decisions as they go and when they decide that they have to publish. And with a nice ethics program, you can go a step back, and by the time they publish, they have a more ethical resolution about their data, no? So that would be my question, and thank you, Chedlia and Trilce, for putting this together.
Yeah, I think that two things which sometimes are confusing. It's professional practices and ethics. They are very linked, but we have to know what is really professional practices and how ethics can be linked with these professional practices. So, as you said, and we had included this in our core topic 4, the accessibility of the information about collection, which are published and those who are not published. And I know that some museums now said that they can publish all the data about their collection, even if these collections are not published. So we have to be aware about this. And we have to, as we said, and Sally said also, we are developing guidelines. So perhaps we can have a guideline about documentation and make precision about this. And also try to introduce all the ethical aspects in the draft we have now. As I said, there is a survey on the member states, especially for the international committees, so you can reply to this survey, and perhaps you can add, because there is a space where you can add all your comments about this. It will be helpful for us to have all your comments about this. And I think, as Trilce said, of course, documentation is an activity which is permanent, and we cannot stop documenting objects because we have always research, we have some new collection which enter in our museum. So it's something which is a permanent activity. And I know, because I did this for many years, I know that people don't want to make this job because it is not something very, how to say, we don't merge when we make documentation. We are in a somewhere, but we are not on the front of the scene. But we did a very, very good job for others, and especially for the heritage and for the collection. So we are making something which will stay for the future generation. And what you said about the data, it's very important to have the good data before applying the new technologies. If you have not data, if you have not the good and the identifying your collection in a good way, it's not possible to have the use of the new technologies. I want to say something, as I am in the Arab region and the African region. These two regions need for help about documentation. Perhaps there are one or two countries that have a good documentation, but all the others have not good documentation. And I think that CIDOC can be for help for these countries, asking them to be in their workshop or something like this. I think that the Code of Ethics will help, especially if we did a guideline about documentation. It will help many, many people. I know that in Africa, they need something like this, and they need for help. They need for someone who explain how to do that. Even if by the past we did the handbook of standards, but it can be updated, and we can do something else. Perhaps if Sally say we can make a guideline concerning the documentation.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, we're translating some materials and actually also in Arabic, and with that process we're revising some things. And so Sally, you had oh no, I thought you
I was just going to support what Chedlia said. We'd very much like your participation in helping us create documentation guidelines. So that'd be really great.
So did I understand correctly that you will provide an initial draft, or you want us to work together from the start? I mean, we're happy both.
Yeah.
Both ways.
Yeah, I think working together from the start would be good. We haven't set up, all of what we've done so far is just review the existing guidelines. And after this, once we get the results of this review, I think we'll be able to identify the areas where we need more guidelines. And at that point, we will work with the larger ETHCOM group to set up a process for developing those. So, we would definitely like something for documentation.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. Goodness, I'm looking at the time. It's already 5 o'clock. I wanted to ask those present if you could share what is your main issue when you deal with documentation. What is your main ethical question? Can maybe one of you share? Do you encounter ethic questions in your work?
Here?
Yes.
Well, mainly, I'm sorry, my English is not very good, but we are starting to think about how to invite the communities and in this inclusive documentation, but thinking about maybe this non-standardized ways to preserve the knowledge and practices and rituals which are represented in objects, but also communities, indigenous communities are very reticent, I don't know how to say, with the state. So we have to invite them to be part and to do not be afraid of these big institutions and standards and these Western conceptions of information. And this new code of ethics has brought us new ways to invite them and get this alliance to improve the documentation and make it more and enrich the collection knowledge.
Super, thank you.
Yes, it's a way for them to protect their heritage. So we have to focus on this, saying that in a decade of almost years, there will not trace about your heritage. I would like to say that there is the handbook of standards. There is a version which is in Arabic, and it can perhaps help some countries by using it because the standards are the same. We can develop them with new technologies, but the standards, I think, that are the same. So there is a version in an ICOM handbook, which has been published by ICOM and UNESCO, and there is a version in Arabic if you can reach it.
Thank you, Robbie.
Thank you very much.
And I see a chat comment with some feedback. Let me take a look. Whoops, can't read it. Okay, Nancy. Yeah, we are up to the time. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I would be very happy to continue the discussion. I just wanted to say what my interests are, and I think it's very pertinent to look at it across the time in different countries and how cultural heritage is interpreted, and being in a different historical context, and then our interpretation today, also the colonial aspects, and I'm in the European Commission subgroup for cultural heritage, and a part of that, a very relevant part of that, where also ICOM has presented the Code of Ethics, is the discussion around illicit trafficking and the ethical implications. So I would be happy to continue the discussion.
Super.
Sorry, I have to leave.
It's good. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the invitation. Take care. Bye.
And I see Natalie's comment, so thank you. I think we can take that as part of the process on the guidelines about documentation that's more specific about protocols and these kind of things. As Sally presented at the beginning, the Code of Ethics is something meant to be a bit more at a higher level, like our values that are guiding us. And so we'll have to sort of pull some of these ideas together at a higher level. I wonder if I'm thinking if handy to follow up this conversation now within CIDOC, even though, we will send some feedback at this moment to be part of inside the deadline. But maybe we can follow up in a couple of weeks within CIDOC and have this draft document that everybody can contribute to. And then maybe we can, advance our process, and then you will receive maybe a little bit later document, but, it still could be part of the process. Any last, I would like to just ask the audience if there's any last comment you would like to make about some questions, but also most important, what are the ethics questions you come across on your daily work?
There's a comment from Natalie online and in the chat.
Yeah, this is what I just answered, that I think this question is more for the guidelines about documentation rather than the code of ethics. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I know we're up on the time, and so maybe we should have to just continue this at another moment. Thank you very much for joining all, for staying a few more minutes, and for your comments on the chat. I'll be saving these and including in our notes. And Sally and Chedlia, I'll be sending you then our notes once we rework and we, as probably, we meet next week, so we'll be discussing this as well next week at the conference.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for having this webinar. We really appreciate it and look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So have a good afternoon.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.